Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a topic that's both fascinating and often misunderstood: the reality of Ottoman Empire. It's easy to imagine vast empire stretching across continents from Europe to Asia, and it's hard not to picture powerful sultans and sprawling places. But what was life really like in Ottoman Empire? What was the day to day reality for the millions of people who lived under its rule? Let's separate myth from fact and explore the truth behind this empire's legacy. Now, the Ottoman Empire began in 13th century as a small Turkish principality in Anatolia, but in just a few hundred years it grew into one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. The turning point came in 1453 when Sultan Mehmed II, often called Mehmed the Conqueror, captured Constantinople. This was not just the fall of the Byzantine Empire, it was the rise of a new superpower, the Ottomans. With their superior military and strategic genius, soon controlled much of southeastern Europe, the Middle East, and parts of North Africa. Under the rule of sultans like Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire reached its peak in the 16th century, stretching from Hungary to Egypt and from the Balkans to the Arabian Peninsula. But there's more to the story than just conquest and military victories. The Ottoman Empire wasn't just a kingdom, it was a system of governance that blended military, religious, and cultural forces into one. Let's talk about how the empire was run. The Sultan was the absolute ruler, not just politically but also religiously, as the caliph or the leader of the Muslim world. But ruling an empire this vast required more than just a powerful leader. The Ottomans had a highly organized bureaucracy that helped govern the many regions of their empire. At the heart of political system were the viziers and pashas, who acted as regional governors. They were responsible for law enforcement, collecting taxes, and maintaining order. The empire was divided into provinces, each ruled by these powerful officials. Below them, there was a system of military and civil officials who ensured everything ran smoothly. One of the most interesting aspects of Ottoman rule was the millet system. The Ottoman allowed different religious communities like Muslims, Christians, and Jews to govern themselves to some extent. The Ottomans allowed different religious communities like Muslims, Christians, and Jews to govern themselves to some extent. This system allowed people to practice their religion freely, but it also kept the peace across the empire's diverse population. Different religious groups had their own leaders, courts, and schools, making the empire a patchwork of various cultures and beliefs. So, what was daily life like in Ottoman Empire? Well, it varied depending on who you were and where you lived. At the top were the elite members of Sultan's court, high-ranking military officials, and wealthy merchants. These people lived in cities, often in grand palaces or mansions. Cities like Istanbul, which was the empire's capital, were bustling hubs of culture, trade, and politics. At the other end of the spectrum, the majority of the population were farmers, artisans, and laborers. In rural areas, people lived off the land, farming wheat, cotton, and other crops. In cities, people worked in markets, making everything from textiles to pottery, and for all the classes. Public baths, known as hammams, were a vital part of our daily life. Women in the Ottoman Empire had a complex role in the elite classes. Women often lived in harems and were confined to private spaces. However, some women, especially in urban areas, could gain a degree of influence running business or having a say in politics. The most famous example is Rosalana, the wife of Suleiman the Magnificent, who played a significant political role during her time. But life in the empire wasn't just about politics and privilege. Public spaces like the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul or the countless mosques created an environment where people from all walks of life came together to shop, socialize, and worship. The architectural beauty of these spaces still stands today, a testament of the empire's cultural influence. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the Ottoman military. The empire's army was its backbone. The most famous part of Ottoman military was the Janissaries, an elite corps of soldiers originally made up for Christian boys taken through the Devsherim system, who were trained to become loyal soldiers. These Janissaries were feared across Europe, and their military prowess played a major role in the Ottomans' expansion. But the Ottomans didn't just rely on foot soldiers, they were also pioneers in the use of gunpowder and cannons. The capture of Constantinople in 1453, for example, was largely due to the use of massive cannons that could breach the city's once impenetrable walls. While the Ottomans enjoyed a period of military success, expansion began to slow down by the late 17th century. As the empire grew older, it became harder to maintain control of its vast territories. Like all great empires, the Ottoman Empire eventually faced decline. By the late 17th century, military defeats, particularly at the hands of the Austrians and Russians, marked the start of a slow decline. On top of that, European powers began to rise, leading to emergence of colonial empires and a shift in global trade routes. The Ottomans by then had become increasingly isolated. The 19th century saw the empire lose territory to nationalistic movements as countries like Greece and Serbia broke away. And by the time of World War I, the Ottoman Empire sided with the Central Powers, only to be defeated. The Treaty of Sevres in 1920 marked the official disintegration of the empire, and by 1923, modern Turkey was born under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Despite its decline, the Ottoman Empire left an undeniable legacy that still affects the world today. From the stunning architecture of the Blue Mosque and Topkapi Place to the cultural exchanges across continents, the Ottomans shaped the course of history in profound ways. So, what's the reality of Ottoman Empire? It was a complex, multi-ethnic empire that thrived from centuries but ultimately couldn't adapt to the changing world around it.